The morning was bitter, cold enough that the breath of every mechanic in the school's garage turned into little puffs of frustration. The old diesel generator had given out again, and the science fair, scheduled to power up in 2 hours, was hanging by a thread of hope and a mess of extension cords. "Call maintenance," barked Mr. Dwyer, the head science teacher. "We don't have time to play with this thing." "We are maintenance," mumbled Josh, the senior with oil-smudged glasses, fidgeting with the generator's tangled wiring. In the corner, pushing a mop bucket, stood Louis, the janitor, 65, always humming old jazz under his breath, always unseen. The kids mostly ignored him. He was just the janitor, until he set the mop down. "You're gonna flood it if you prime it like that," Louis said softly, eyes on the engine. The room turned. A few students snorted. One whispered too loudly, "What does he know?" Louis took a step forward. "Mind if I try?" Josh glanced at Dwyer, who was too exasperated to say no. "Be my guest," he muttered, arms folded, expecting failure. Louis leaned over the generator, fingers moving like someone unlocking memories. He twisted a valve here, adjusted a clamp there, then pressed the primer, once. Not 3 times like the others had, a quiet click. Then vroom! The engine roared to life. The room froze. It took a second before the whooping started. Josh stared like he'd seen a ghost. Mr. Dwyer raised his eyebrows and gave a nod of grudging respect. But Louis just smiled, wiped his hands on a rag, and reached for his mop. "Wait," Josh said. "How did you know what to do?" Louis shrugged. "Used to work on engines in the Navy, spent 20 years fixing things most people never knew were broken." The silence was heavier now, not of judgment, but of realization. They'd seen him 100 times, but never looked at him. One girl, Melissa, stepped forward. "Will you teach me? I mean, if you have time?" Louis's face softened. "Time is something I've got." From that day, Louis became a quiet legend at Maple Hill. Hi. Every Friday afternoon, long after the final bell rang, students would gather in the garage, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Louis taught them things no textbook ever could. How to listen to a machine like it was speaking, how to notice the little things, how sometimes the quietest people know the most. But the biggest lesson wasn't mechanical, it was human. They learned that kindness doesn't need applause, that knowledge can wear overalls, and that judging someone by their job title is the quickest way to miss a hero in your midst. Years later, when Louis passed away peacefully in his sleep, the school auditorium was packed for the memorial. Not with silence, but with laughter, stories, and the hum of engines from the science fair he'd once saved. On the wall, beneath a framed photo of Louis wiping grease off a wrench, a plaque read, "He didn't just fix engines, he turned on lives." And just like that, the janitor who had once been laughed at, left behind an engine that never stopped running, in the hearts he'd touched. The students, now alumni scattered across cities and careers, began to return. Melissa, now an engineer, in Toronto, started a scholarship in Louis's name, for students who showed potential not just in academics, but in humility. Josh, who had gone on to teach, shared Louis's story in every first-day lecture, reminding his students that real brilliance often comes dressed in work boots. Even Mr. Dwyer, now retired, visited the garage once a month. He didn't say much, but he'd sit on the old stool Louis used and watch the kids tinker with engines, sometimes smiling at the memory of that freezing morning. Back at the school, the garage evolved. What had once been a dusty room with spare parts became the Louis Lab, a community tech space where students from all backgrounds, even those who didn't quite fit into the usual mold, came to learn. It was open to everyone, no questions asked, because Louis never asked questions like, "What grade are you in?" or "What's your GPA?" He asked better ones, like, "What are you curious about?" or "Want to try it yourself?" And long after the echoes of his footsteps faded from the halls, the spirit of his kindness, patience, and quiet wisdom lingered. It lived in the way students helped one another, in how they greeted every custodian with respect, and in the unspoken understanding that no one was just anything. That, perhaps, was Louis's greatest fix. Not the generator, not the machines, But the broken lens through which people sometimes looked at each other, and the engine he turned on in under 30 seconds, it's still there, still humming, still reminding everyone that sometimes the ones you overlook are the ones who light up the whole room, just when you need it most. Years later, on a gray Wednesday in November, a boy named Isaiah wandered into the Louis lab. He wasn't the type most teachers noticed. Quiet, awkward, always scribbling in the margins of his notebooks. He didn't speak much in class and usually ate lunch alone, tucked into corners like a folded note. That day, Isaiah had followed the sound of something he couldn't explain. Metal clinks, soft laughter, the comforting whir of tools in motion. He peeked inside, half ready to retreat. But someone noticed. A girl, no older than 16, with smudges on her jeans and oil under her nails, looked up. "You lost?" she asked, not unkindly. Isaiah shrugged. "Just looking." She nodded, toward the workbench. "You ever take apart a carburetor?" He shook his head. "Want to learn?" That's how it began. Not with a grand gesture, but with an invitation. Isaiah returned the next day. Then the next. He didn't say much, but he listened. He watched. And slowly, his hands stopped trembling when holding a wrench. He began to ask questions, then offer answers. Then, one afternoon, while helping another student with a wiring issue, he smiled. It wasn't lost on the teachers either. Isaiah's confidence began to grow outside the lab. He raised his hand in class, joined a group project, even helped organize a local repair-a-thon for families who couldn't afford appliance fixes. The Louis lab, like its namesake, had turned something invisible into something strong. Years down the line, when Isaiah spoke at his own graduation as valedictorian, he told a story. Not of exams or grades, but of an old engine and a man he'd never met. He wasn't famous, he didn't wear a suit, but what he built still runs. And not just machines, people. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. And somewhere, maybe in the quiet hum of an old generator or the scratch of a broom in an empty hallway, Louis was still there, still fixing things, still reminding the world that you don't need a title to make a difference. You just need to care.